For further analysis, let's turn to Marcus Kolga, who is a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. He's the founder and director of Disinfo Watch, and he often writes about Russian and Central and Eastern European issues and disinformation. Marcus, always good to have you on the show. Thanks for making some time.
Thanks for having me on, Natasha.
Marcus, we need a reality check. Because we're hearing from Volodymyr Zelensky that, hey, we're on track, the U.S. is with us, productive, we're moving forward in the right direction, allies, ahoy. And then we've got the Kremlin saying we've had thoughtful and productive and constructive talks. And what is the reality here? Because both those parties can't be happy at the same time.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, what we heard is that Wtikoff met for 3 hours with Vladimir Putin. The best we got out of it was that they exchanged signals, I guess, about the intent, Russia's intent, U.S. intent. So that doesn't make me particularly optimistic as to what might have been achieved here. Furthermore, the fact that Donald Trump signed an executive order just a few minutes after those meetings ended, imposing a 25% tariff on India for its purchase of Russian oil and gas over the past 3 years. That revenue, of course, is like a lifeline to Russia, allowing it to continue to purchase drones, build drones and missiles that are part of this war of terror against Ukraine. All of that leads me to believe that the negotiations didn't go as expected, and certainly didn't go very well. And it also leads me to believe that Donald Trump is finally coming around to acknowledging and realizing who he is exactly dealing with in terms of Vladimir Putin, that Vladimir Putin is not an honest negotiator, that he is not interested in ending this war and is in fact much more interested in prolonging it. So at least that part does make me optimistic that Donald Trump has a realistic assessment and understanding, it appears at least that way, of Vladimir Putin and the regime in the Kremlin.
Let's talk about something you've referenced, which is these secondary sanctions or secondary tariffs that the President of the United States is threatening against countries that are buying oil, like you said, India and China from Russia. Is that threat enough of a motivation for Russia?
Yeah, that's a huge threat. Right now, Russia's war machine, it relies almost exclusively on those oil and gas revenues, the gas and oil that's being bought, not just by India, but from China, Turkey, and other countries. And so that threat of secondary sanctions, tariffs, will likely help motivate some of those countries to perhaps seek alternative sources to wean themselves off their reliance on Russian oil and gas. And what will eventually happen, I think in theory, is that this will suppress the demand for Russian oil and thereby suppress the price of oil and gas that Russia is selling its oil and gas at. And hopefully that will put sufficient enough pressure on Putin, on the regime, to seek a meaningful end to this war. So, these secondary sanctions, I think, come at a key time and could be a real game changer.
Something that gets lost at times, Marcus, about the story is the state of the Russian economy. Talk to us about that.
Sure. The Russian economy has been teetering. Almost all of the state's resources have been put towards building up the war machine. And this has been happening for the past 3.5 years. Inflation is sky high in Russia right now. The interest rates are also at historical highs, and it's difficult to see how Russia can continue to sustain this effort with the economy being that it's in the state that it is. And so this is, again, one key factor when we're looking at these secondary sanctions, the revenue that Russia depends on from its oil and gas. It will also impact this very delicate economic situation inside Russia. And again, could be a real factor over the next 6 to 12 months if these secondary sanctions are imposed, and not just by the United States. Europe could follow suit if that's the case, we could see some significant pressure on the Kremlin, and I think that we'll see Vladimir Putin coming to the negotiating table and really giving Ukraine a meaningful and upper hand in those negotiations.
Is there any reality in which we reach a ceasefire in this war and Ukraine gets back the territory that it's lost?
That's a good question. It's difficult in the current situation and the current environment that we're in. I think it's really difficult to see that. I think one scenario that's being talked about is a policy of non-recognition by the Western world of Russia's occupation of Crimea and the other territories that it's currently that it's invaded and currently occupies. We saw this happen after the Second World War. There was a Western non-recognition policy towards the Baltic states. Eventually, it took 50 years, but eventually they regained their freedom. I think a similar policy might be looked at in terms of Crimea and some of these occupied territories. But I wouldn't rule out that those occupied territories like Donbass, Luhansk, others, that they could in fact be returned to Ukraine if again there is significant pressure and enough pressure put on the Russian government to do so. I wouldn't rule that out.
So where are we then? How close are we to a ceasefire, a real one?
I would say that we're still a ways away. Russia needs to feel the pain. Vladimir Putin needs to feel the pain. We need to impose real significant costs on what he's doing. And he's not yet feeling that. I think that Vladimir Putin feels that he still has the upper hand. The fact that we're seeing hundreds of Ukrainians killed every month, thousands critically injured every month from these nighttime drone and missile attacks. I think what Vladimir Putin feels like he is wearing down Ukraine's morale, its resolve to stand up to the Russian onslaught. I think he's feeling like he may have the upper hand in that. So again, we need to continue imposing costs. We need to continue sending weapons, air defense systems to Ukraine to help defend itself from these attacks. It's only with significant pressure that this is going to stop and that will arrive at a meaningful ceasefire.
Okay. Marcus Kolga, always good to speak to you. Thanks so much for your time.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on, Natasha.
Our pleasure.